than the rotavirus disease killed and injured prior to the vaccine's introduction. Now, I've heard RFK Jr. say that he's really good at reading scientific research.
I'm comfortable reading science and dissecting it and discerning the difference between junk science and real science.
I don't think he does know the difference between junk science and real science, because prior to 2006, before the vaccine was available, rotavirus, which is an intestinal virus that leads to massive diarrhea, vomiting in young children, it hospitalized 50 to 70,000 children in the United States per year. After the implementation of the rotavirus vaccine from Dr. Paul Offit, those rates have fallen by 50,000. And while yes, in a developed country like the United States, the death rate was low, 50 to 60 deaths a year, in developing nations like India, where there isn't good access to medical care for many people, the deaths were much, much higher. So not only are we preventing hundreds of thousands of doctor and ER visits, we're preventing tens of thousands of hospitalizations in the US, and we're saving over 100,000 lives across the globe. This vaccine is what a scientific miracle looks like. The fact that he's not seeing that and seeing it as a net negative, I just don't understand what research we're looking at. Throughout his book, he makes certain references to children having side effects of this vaccine, but when he's looking at the pamphlet that comes with the vaccine, he's just looking at children having conditions. He's not comparing the children in the unvaccinated group to the vaccinated group, because through natural incidents, kids have all sorts of conditions. Kids who were vaccinated have headaches, and kids who are unvaccinated have headaches. The question is, does the rate of headaches go up? And the answer is pretty much no. Probably the most viral claim RFK Jr. has made in his years has been tying mercury, specifically thimerosal, which is a preservative ingredient used in vaccines in the 1990s. He famously wrote an article titled Deadly Immunity that was published in Salon and Rolling Stone magazine, when a study revealed that mercury in childhood vaccines may have caused autism in thousands of kids. The government rushed to conceal the data and to prevent parents from suing drug companies for their role in the epidemic. But the article is so poorly written, it had to be corrected 5 times before finally being retracted. The editor who published it literally states that it was the worst mistake of her life. The ironic part was that on July 1st, 1999, 6 years before the article was written, the FDA already sent a letter to all U.S. vaccine manufacturers requesting them to remove thimerosal as a precautionary measure. Currently, all routine vaccines recommended for children 6 years of age and younger are available in formulations that do not contain thimerosal. And to reiterate, this was a precautionary move, as no research has found any increased health risk from presence of the ingredient in vaccines. And let's run the hypothetical and say that he did uncover some sort of link between autism and thimerosal. Then we should have seen autism rates crumble once thimerosal was removed. That didn't happen because thimerosal wasn't to blame. And it didn't stop him, by the way, when this article was removed. He went on to write a book about this in 2014.
We are 4.2% of the global population. We buy 70% of the pharmaceutical drugs on Earth.
We are about 4% of the global population here in the United States, but we do not buy 70% of the global population. We buy around 6 to 8%. 6 to 8. That's a big difference. And some might say, well, he's talking about money spent on mercury. Well, yeah, because we're usually the ones launching them first, so we have first access. But even then, we spend about 40 to 50%, not 70.
When I was a kid, I always say this: the typical pediatrician has seen 1 case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office with.
No, not 1 of 3 children is diabetic in the United States. Up to age 18, 0.3 something, less than 0.4% of children have diabetes. That's type 1 and type 2. That means 1 in 300, not 1 in 3. I mean, that level of hyperbole is dangerous.
How do you know there is no diabetes in China? Today, 50% of the population is diabetic.
50% of China is not diabetic. The rate is somewhere around to 13%, which is still incredibly high. I mean, if someone was going out and butchering statistics like this over and over again as a resident to me, I would file a report that they need to study more, that they need to do some sort of remediation. But this is the person who's at the head, the top of his agency, doing it over and over and over. And people are allowed to make mistakes. I'm not about catching someone in a gotcha. But he makes these mistakes over and over and over again and doesn't issue a correction. That's a problem. Something that I noted even in my debate on Jubilee was that RFK Jr. does not believe HIV causes AIDS. In fact, in a New York Magazine interview published in June 2023, he told the reporter nobody knows whether HIV is the sole cause of AIDS. There are much better candidates than HIV for what causes AIDS. Now, if you're trying to be charitable, you might say, well, maybe he thinks a different virus causes AIDS. Well, let's see.
There's a lot of people that say it's not a virus. The virus is a passenger virus. And these people are dying because of poverty. 100% of the people who died of the first 1,000 with AIDS, the people who were addicted to poverty.
The party drug, poverty, is what our Secretary of Health and Human Services believes is causing AIDS. I struggle to coherently explain why that's wrong because it's such a ridiculous claim to make when we've dropped the death rate and the increase the longevity of someone who has HIV because of antiviral medication. To then say that it's because of illicit drug use, just the logic is flawed on so many levels that there's clearly an HIV denialism happening here that is devoid of any scientific, factual logic. Continuing on this crusade to demerit the MMR vaccine, RFK Jr. now claims that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine is not very useful because those who are elderly lose their immunity.
The vaccine weighs about 4.5% per year. And that means older people are essentially unvaccinated.
That's just not true. The Lancet just did a great study on this, showing that the vaccine weighs 0.04% per year. So I don't know if you misread the study, but again, we're having this issue with statistics. And that's a very big difference because if you factor this out over someone's lifespan, 0.04%, 4% is a drastically different outcome for someone who's 60 or 70 years of age. That being said, is it possible that someone who's 75 loses their immunity despite getting the vaccine as a child? Yeah, it's possible. In fact, for some jobs, I have to do something known as MMR titers to confirm that they are immune to these conditions because they might be exposed to them being healthcare workers, as an example. But to say that it's 4.5% annually, just not accurate.
I'm not against vaccine. I've never done any vax. That's something I've said about it, making it look crazy, like a conspiracy theorist. What I've said is let's have testing for each of the vaccines to make sure that they are that they're safe and effective. Vaccines are the only medical product that is not safety tested prior to licensing. And we need placebo-controlled trials.
I can't believe I have to educate the person who's in charge of the CDC, FDA, and NIH, but vaccines do undergo placebo randomized controlled studies. COVID vaccines ran through tens of thousands of people in randomized controlled placebo trials. When you have a completely new vaccine, you're doing placebo randomized controlled studies. But if you already have a vaccine that you know the safety profile for, and you know that it works, so you test it. Now you no longer need to test it against placebo. You only need to test it against the new version of the vaccine. Then you can compare the safety rates, the effectiveness rates, and he says that this is somehow different than the pharmaceutical industry. It's not. The pharmaceutical industry works in the same way. That when you have a novel medication, absolutely you do randomized controlled studies. But when you have a new medication that works in the same way, you can compare it to the standard of care. And the reason that we do this, scientifically speaking, is because it's unethical to withhold treatment in a randomized placebo-controlled trial when you know something works and is beneficial. So what we do is instead, we randomize into two groups. One group gets the existing vaccine that we know the safety profile of and the effectiveness, and we compare it to the new one. Vaccines are incredibly well tested. In fact, they're more well tested than pharmaceuticals because they're given to people who are healthy. We have a higher threshold for side effects in pharmaceuticals because those people are actually sick and have an issue. But when you give something to a healthy person, you have to have a higher bar of safety. That's why we have the Vaccine Safety Data Net that actually monitors vaccines after they've been administered. And this is to the tune of millions of doses of vaccines. The fact that he said that they're not tested is again the crusade of trying to discredit vaccines. Then came the beef tallow oil. Literally, Charlie Kirk tweets that RFK ate steak and shake on live TV, the fast food joint that's bravely applying everything from beef tallow. That is the way.
We are poisoning ourselves, and it's coming from principally these ultra-processed foods. And what we're trying to do is President Trump wants us to have radical transparency and to incentivize companies like this one to switch to traditional ingredients like beef tallow.
There you go.
We're talking about making people healthy. You're eating fast food. And I'm not villainizing fast food, but if you're going to be talking about making substantial improvements to the health of the United States, you should be talking about removal of those foods. In fact, it's not the chemical, it's not the oil that's the issue. It's the fact that we're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. The MAHA report that was just put out a few days ago talks about the over-consumption of ultra-processed foods, yet they're eating it as an example, celebrating restaurants that are serving with it.
When I was a kid, McDonald's was made with tallow fat. That was good for you. Your body needs that. It makes you healthy.
Can you imagine saying McDonald's fries make you healthy as someone who's in charge of a health agency? I mean, he's just fully making things up. In America, we're over-consuming saturated fat. We're over-consuming ultra-processed foods. His own report states that. And yet, he's celebrating fast food, celebrating how McDonald's used to fry their foods in beef tallow.
Almost all of the falconers I grew up with in the Hudson Valley have serious now brain fog and with other symptoms of diabetes. And the idea that this may have been, it's highly likely that
It's highly likely that this is Lyme disease is hereditary, is with 100% certainty wrong. 60,000 years ago, there's traces of Lyme disease. We have ticks preserved in amber from dinosaur days because they fed on dinosaurs. So the fact that he's extrapolating all these thoughts that have no scientific basis is really scary.
There are plenty of studies that make it clear that SIDS is caused by vaccines. SIDS really appeared following the first vaccine.
There are no studies showing that. The reason some people have considered an association is because of the timing. A lot of the first vaccines are given at 2 to 4 months of age, and SIDS peaks at 2 to 4 months of age. So people thought that there could be an association. And when research has studied it, we have seen that there is no relation. In fact, if you truly look at the data, you actually have seen in the research that if your child is up to date with vaccines, you have a lower risk of SIDS in some instances. And notice how I'm hedging. It would be really easy, based on the strength of that association, for me to say vaccines decrease risk of SIDS, but I don't because I'm honest to the data in saying that there is some preliminary evidence showing that keeping up to date with vaccines can lower the chance of your child having sudden infant death syndrome. But RFK sees two things happen at the same time. He doesn't even care what the evidence shows. He just says that they must be causing one another. Many people who are frustrated with our healthcare system for being too reactive and not preventive forget that some vaccines are preventive for not just regular illness, but also cancer. More specifically, the HPV vaccine, also known as the human papillomavirus vaccine. So that virus actually ends up causing cervical cancer. So by getting kids vaccinated, we actually have seen a tremendous drop in cervical cancer rates. That didn't stop RFK Jr. from tweeting and currently leaving this tweet up. Gardasil HPV vaccine appears to be increasing the risk of cervical cancer in vaccinated age groups. I'm going to ignore all the COVID stuff because we're not talking about it. Let me give you some data. Sweden, from 2006 to 2017, it's almost 2 million girls and women. 63% lower risk overall, 88% lower risk when you start the first dose below age 17. England, around the same time frame, 87% lower cancer rate. Multi-country meta-analysis done by the WHO, 50% drop in high-grade lesions within a decade of the program starting. In the United States, done with the CDC, with the National Precancer Surveillance Center, 80% drop in cervical precancers among 20 to 24-year-olds. It's just so obvious to see that the data is clear. When you vaccinate against HPV, specifically the high-risk subtypes that can lead to cervical cancer, you see a drop in cervical cancer, in precancerous lesions.
Incredible.
And RFK not only doesn't see it, but sees some sort of risk that no other scientific organization in the globe, not just in the US, how are we gonna get to the bottom of making people healthy if we don't do the research? We're firing scientists, we're slashing budgets by hundreds of millions of dollars. Who's gonna be doing the research? I just don't see a plan here. There's a lot of political speak, PR stunts, promises that will remove certain dyes from kids' foods as if that's the problem. No, the issue is the ultra-processed foods. The issue is that obesity is going on. Those are the real problems because that impacts all parts of our life. Entrusting all of that to someone who makes statements like this,
We should not be giving black people the same vaccine schedule that's given to whites.
it's scary to me. Our health agencies cannot be led by someone who repeatedly denies the very science they're charged to uphold. Secretary Kennedy's long record of spreading vaccine falsehoods and undermining proven public health measures makes him a clear threat to millions of Americans who rely on accurate guidance. Certainly, he should have never been confirmed to head the office of HHS, but choosing to leave him in charge is like handing the keys to a driver who continues to insist that stop signs and red lights are optional. For the sake of our children, frontline health workers, scientists, and every family that deserves accurate healthcare guidance, we must demand his immediate resignation. Normally at this time, I would recommend you to click here and watch another one of my videos, but not today. Instead, I'm asking my American viewers to click the link at the top of my description to find out who your representatives in Congress are. From there, you can contact them via phone or email and join me in calling for Secretary Kennedy to resign from office. If you're not sure what to say, I've even included a few sentences you can copy and paste into an email or say over the phone. I can't do this alone. I need your help.
You didn't do anything right. Problem is, I'm getting breaks to play well, not to gotta fix this. Ghost kills someday. I'm technically ghost, so I'm thinking what's going on. smells and shit. their spawn site now. I don't know. So they have enough. Let's start with 250. Say wave 16. No. When I start practicing, I want to have like the stupid amount of homemade. I want to work backwards. So let's not start with 200, let's start with 1,000. Put practicing a late spawn side, that should be good. Let's save. the raid. Just saw that. Where'd your stream go? 500 yet? I don't remember. Congrats if you did. If not, feel free to ask questions. I'm not really getting much out of practice today. I'm just gonna have fun. You did, congrats. Sick. What are you shooting for now? Go for 1,000. There you are, dude. I'll be honest, like, Luke from 600 to 800 is a very different animal compared to 800 to 1,000. I mean, you know that already. Yeah, you improved a whole lot really fast, which is awesome to see. I was not improving that fast, so I believe you will catch up to me. It's just really just how much, like, 1,000 to 1050 is going to be a way bigger skill jump than 800. Like, I don't know, 800 to 1,000 in a lot of time, but it just gets so nuts. What do you mean? Because you got somebody on your friends list with 890? Oh, because you have Sven and it down on your friends list. Yeah. They really just, like, remember, though, that this game does not have a perfectly smooth difficulty progression. So, like for instance, you know, beating Gigabeats even once is a lot harder to learn than just like beating the first couple of loop waves once you're there. You pretty much just have to learn a little bit of prioritization. But if you just shoot at random shit, you will die. Like a 500, 600 volt wave. It's missing again. Each other to compete and fight first. Oh yeah, that happens, and then somebody pulls away. Like that's me on my friends list right now. Yeah, I was getting to that. Like post orb, you know, Levy. You think Levy is the final boss of the game, but I think like it's the final boss of getting 500. But I think you're wrong. The actual final boss is the Ghost Speed and Post Orb. Like, Post Orb is just so fucking hard. But, like, it took a minute to grok that because it looks like superficially like a loop wave does. So when you're learning loop, you kind of think that Ghost Orb is just like loop, but it's not. It's way worse than another loop wave. Like eventually, if you get fast enough, the loop is worse, obviously. Yeah, another way of saying it is that after Post Orb is over, you get out of Post Orb alive, the game gets a lot easier for 2 minutes. Trying to learn later Ghost Kill in the second round of Spider is too bad for anybody else. Like we could do some Levy into Post Orb practice. Hurt me either. I've been dropping tech a lot. So my first question for Levy, I guess, is do you know how to find Lord? Yeah. Take that as a no. It's really not a big deal. It's just a little thing you can do to give you, just give you a tiny little head start on Levy, so. Okay, sound cue. Yeah, that's one way. Another way is you can look at the tiles. Like, this is north. Wait. Yeah, so this isn't it. Some of the, you can kind of see how some of the tiles aren't actually perfectly even. Like these are smooth. Let's say. Yeah, that one's under. So I'm just looking at the middle columns. Like this is north, and I can tell just by looking at the fact that this tile is higher than the one next to it. So that's another way. Yeah, you're right. But all that does is it just starts, you know, on Levy's point, you start facing a gem. Yeah, that's not bad. You gotta do the shimmy, just rotate counterclockwise while teching. Try. Okay, because we're still finishing that out today. If you're gonna kill Levy, this is probably the first time in the game where it actually is really important to have good tech. Like you benefit a lot from not dropping it. Having a good orb kill time. Ideally, you want to get it under. Very important. All throughout this segment, as long as this Giga is up, we are not killing squids. Alright? So I fucked up the beginning of that. But it's okay, 'cause I'm gonna eat it. That's not okay. Damn, squid 3 not dying. That's interesting. Like, you have... what I was about to try to do before I screwed it up was just to demonstrate why, like, I think it's much more important to kill the Giga on time than to kill any particular squid on time, and that's generally going to be true in loop going forward. That if you, first of all, if you have 2 P's in the arena, you're cooked. You can never let that happen. So don't ever be late to killing a P'd. Giga Post Orb is hard because it kind of forces you to accept that literally ghost spawn. really have to kill that gigapede on time before another one spawns. Like, if another gigapede spawns, that's lights out. Like, you can't don't allow that. I think if you get the gigapede kill clean, we should be able to take care of any squids after that. But yeah, Squid 3 is annoying in no small part because homing sucks so much against it. Homing daggers just don't track it correctly, so they end up hitting the body of the thing and losing health instead of killing shit for you. Not mean to HSG, but whatever. Continue. So we're really talking about bookstores. Again, when this Giga spawns, I don't really give a shit about squids anymore. Like, unless there's somehow something that's just a gimme. But there's almost always something better you could be doing, like just pre-firing more, thinking about how you're setting up your Giga scrape, moving to the center of the arena as you're setting up the scrape is what causes it to boil like this, which is really nice because you can collect the gems faster and the Giga bodies kind of shields you a bit from skulls while you're scraping. Okay. So there's your Squid 3 right there. I just pretty much wait for it to turn towards me while shooting at other stuff. That's okay. Again, as long as we kill the Giga on time. We don't kill the Giga on time. That's not okay. Well, this guy again, on these early waves, we can scrape the Giga quickly. And yet, my idea here is that anybody else who's interested. My idea there was that I wanted to kill the ghost with just one spider up if I can, because then the gems from the ghosts all bounce at the same time and easier to protect. But it's also just a good time to do it because you just have spiders in the arena. The only other Giga I will scrape this early during loop. We're into loop now. Let's go back. It's not technically true, I think, but I kind of stopped thinking to myself, like, in my head, the loop ends and I kill that ghost speed. Or, sorry, not loop. Post-orb ends and I kill that ghost speed. Another strategy you can do also is to figure, well, like once you get comfy in early loop waves, this is a bit advanced, I guess, probably even too advanced for me, but you can, if you just decide, well, I'm not using homing in like 500 and 600 loop waves, so therefore, I don't really need to kill the ghost either. And you actually end up doing two ghost kills at the same time. Just a little bit later. Save pretty good time. Collect a list of it, I think. I might not be appreciating all the benefits. Too. Sprinkles like this, I think it's kind of a crutch. You just sprinkle a little bit ghosts, it actually doesn't reduce the number of shots you can kill the ghost with in the ideal case, but it does give you a little bit of yes, if you're missing shots later, as I tend to do. I'm intentionally leaving one spider up here. Because now when I kill that spider, these all bounce at the same time, or they just land right in my head. Whereas if you don't put a spider up, then they bounce separately. Bounce like up the middle, and bounce into your head. That's all. That's all. Spend a little bit less time collecting that way. Yeah, it's bad. Let's just go straight to post order. It's a little bit unfair. I'm gonna shoot that. After we scrape, we have a few seconds before the ghost spawns. I still think that people, especially who are new to it, should use some homing there. But use some homing right after your ghost scrape, or right after your giga scrape rather, or just to finish it off. Just finish it with a little bit of homing. And some of it will get eaten, but that's okay. Just give yourself a little break because you're going to deal with this nasty. On the other hand, it's also useful to understand that that is the end of post orb, more or less. Like, the hard part of post orb goes over. And you're still getting to kill the ghosts on that first wave. But once I kill all these, I'm under a lot of pressure right now. All these squares are about to gush away. But if you get those squares down before they gush again, it's gonna start feeling a lot better. To the center, I'm kind of looking, I know where the gigapede is behind me, so I'm gonna hook it with that. It's really hard first to remember to do that right because you're feeling so overwhelmed and like the pressure is getting to you, but as you get more used to things, it's really a good thing to try to remember to do. Eventually it's sort of becomes second nature, you just kind of feel like, oh, that's a great speed, I should move to the center a little bit. Give me that nice foil. Faster scraping, easy position. Just like that. How about you, Sven? Anything you want to see? Like, where's your PB? We could take a look at it. This is my friend's list. Yeah, there it is. I don't know, you actually watching, Sven? You just lurking. Take a quick peek. I don't want to go through all of it if he's not actually listening, but take a look at like 700. Yeah, this year I think it's just too early. I hesitate to say you're too early to the ghosts, but like at that point I'm thinking you need to. It's not a big deal. You do have a lot of time. I would just be damaging Torrents. Maybe you could sprinkle it. Yeah, something else. I think I noticed this on stream too. Something else I'd love to see is if you start teching, like count down from 10, and like just don't stop teching. If there's still enemies in the arena, just keep shooting until you get to at least like an 8 count. I think a lot of time, what I see Sven doing that sets his collection back is Sven will shotgun a few times and then wait and then start shotgunning again, and all those gems from the first few shots get close enough to that the next shotgun shot blasts them out of the arena. And it's really actually better to just keep teching because then they're not close to you, so the force isn't that strong. You might be able to see it in an overhead view. We just watch like this. I'm turn the volume down a little bit. If we just watch like this, we might start to see how collecting too early can actually lead to bad collection. I don't know, I'm gonna give an example. Let's see, this is good. There it is a little bit. Yeah, part of there we go. That's exactly it. So after we kill the spider, of course, part of the problem is that you're feeling anxious about dropping tech and stuff, but like right that bang, you know. So either like at that point, you know, either wait because you think you just wait a couple more ticks because you think you can collect, or just let the gems go. You know, that would be better too, because then you could have been damaging thorns there. So yeah, I don't know. Broski's asleep. I don't really feel like playing anymore. I got some other shit to do. So I think if it ended there. Unless there's no questions. I do feel like showing things, but next time. These skulls gotta go, man. These stray skulls. Yeah, it's like really, I think Sven just needs more practice and move. Like that's really it. Like just plan, and eventually you'll have that sense in you that just says, oh, this spider is about to spawn. I need to find it. Like, where is it going to spawn next? You know, they're just spawning up, so you can kill it when his face is rising, but you're just not remembering what you need to be doing next. And that just comes from one time, really. And then that will smooth out. So, a little more fun. Anybody else playing Devil Daggers right now? Oh, it's like Mercy. It is. That's right, Mercy. GG.